Alrighty, that took a while, but we're back. Isn't that nice? So, welcome back to another thrilling installment of Storytime Saturdays. I'm your intrepid narrator, who, against all his better judgment, is reading aloud a book that has like different accents for everyone and is written in a weird patois. So, Fragath, that's me. This book was a mistake. It's a good mistake, and I love the book. It's a great book, but reading it aloud was definitely overambitious. Oh gosh, I did not know what I was in for, or remember, because I'd read the book before, like 10 years ago. And then I was like, oh man, we did something moon related. I should do the moon as a harsh mistress, because it's a moon book. We can have a theme for the year. Fool. You poor simpleton! You had no idea the forces you would unleash upon yourself. Seriously though, uh, if I had to do it all over again, I would probably have chosen a different book. Not because this is a bad book; it's a great book. But oh man, I was not ready. I was not ready, especially paired with my schedule for like the last half year. Has made this extremely difficult, and continues to. Like today is going to have to be another short one, um, relatively short. It's going to only be an hour tops, probably a bit less, but we'll see. I'd like to do longer, but how long is chapter 17 here? Many pages. How long is chapter 18? Jesus Christ, that's long. Um, Man, I don't want to leave it at just one chapter today, but I might have to do. You know what? Hell with it. I'll try and put it off. Um, two chapters today. They're long ones though, so enjoy that. So what happened last time? So last time, our boys Manny and Professor De La Paz both got shipped to Earth in a grain container that was modified. They both survived, but because they are accustomed to lunar gravity, basically all they can do is sit. They can't really get up and walk around because their bone structure and organ structure just can't handle it. So they've been going. The last thing that happened was that they were talking to the people at Lunar Authority, who claim jurisdiction over all matters moon. Uh, and were apparently an organization formed before the current Grand Assembly of Nations. Uh, there's a name for them. Is it FN, Federated Nations? Something like that. I believe that is correct. Um, Federated Nations, yes. Um, they predate the Federated Nations. So their mandate apparently has higher priority, or so they claim. The Lunar Authority has higher priority. That rhymes, sort of. Has a nice rhythm to it. Oh man, here I am yawning. Oi. As I prepare my lungs and brain for the oxygen that I will need in order to read today. Um, so Manny and Professor De La Paz and the prof have met with them, and Lunar Authority was basically like, "You're Earth's moon, dude. You can't. It's ours." And Prof is like, "Okay, that's cool. It's yours. So who are you going to send up there to keep watch on us?" Somebody's going to be exiled in order to do that. They're going to die. They will go up there and they will live there and they will die on the moon because once you go up there and have to stay long term, you basically can't go back. And I believe they did not actually answer that question. They ended with a dramatic scene of Prof trying to raise himself on his elbow and then collapses, and then Manny tries to get up and reach him, and then gets gravity slapped to the ground because gravity is strong. 1G is powerful when you're a loony. All right. Oh, hey, what's up, Kazong? Thanks for tuning in. I will then endeavor to do this in as much of a glorious Russian accent as I possibly can. Difficulty though it may be, it will be worth all while. Okay. As I start chugging more water, because man, this stuff dries me out. Okay, give me a sec. Chapter 17. Neither of us was hurt, and it made juicy news breaks, for I put recording in Stu's hands, and he turned it over to his hired men. Nor were all headlines against us. Stu had recording cut and edited and slanted. Authority to play odd man out? Lunar ambassador collapses under grilling. Outcasts! He cries. Prof Paz points finger of shame. Story, page 8. Not all were good. Nearest to a favorable story in India was editorial in New India Times inquiring whether authority was risking bread of masses in failing to come to terms with lunar insurgents. Was suggested that concessions could be made if would ensure increased grain deliveries. Was filled with inflated statistics. Luna did not feed 100 million Hindus, unless you chose to think of our grain as making a difference between malnutrition and starvation. On other hand, biggest New York paper opined that authority had made whoops, I'm reading lines wrong. On other hand, biggest New York paper opined that authority had made mistake in treating with us at all, since only thing convicts understood was taste of lash. Troops should land, set us in order, hang guilty, leave forces to keep order. Was a quick mutiny, quickly subdued. In Peace Dragoons regiment from which our late oppressors had come, one started by rumor that they were to be shipped to moon. Mutiny not hushed up perfectly. Stu hired good men. Next morning, a message reached us inquiring if Professor de la Paz was well enough to resume discussions. We went, and committee supplied doctor and nurse to watch over Prof. But this time we were searched, and the recorder removed from my pouch. I surrendered it without much fuss. It was Japanese job, supplied by Stu, to be surrendered. Number 6 arm has recess, intended for a power pack, but near enough size of my mini recorder. Didn't need power that day, and most people, even hardened police officers, dislike to touch a prosthetic. Everything discussed day before was ignored, except that chairman started session by scolding us for breaking security of a closed meeting. Prof replied that it had not been closed so far as we were concerned, and that we would welcome newsmen, video cameras, a gallery, anyone, as Luna Free State had nothing to hide. Chairman replied stiffly that so-called Free State did not control these hearings. These sessions were closed, not to be discussed outside this room, and that it was so ordered. Prof looked at me. Will you help me, Colonel? I touched controls of chair, scooted around, was shoving his stretcher wagon with my chair toward door before Chairman realized bluff had been called. Prof allowed himself to be persuaded to stay, without promising anything. Hard to coerce a man who faints if he gets overexcited. Chairman said that there had been many irrelevancies yesterday, and matters discussed best left undiscussed, and that he would permit no digressions today. He looked at Argentino, then at North America.
He went on. Sovereignty is an abstract concept, one that has been redefined many times as mankind has learned to live in peace. We need not discuss it. The real question, Professor, or even Ambassador de facto, if you like, we shan't quibble. The real question is this. Are you prepared to guarantee that the lunar colonies will keep their commitments? What commitments, sir? All commitments, but I have in mind specifically your commitments concerning grain shipments. I know of no such commitments, sir, Prof answered with bland innocence. Chairman's hand tightened on gavel, but he answered quietly. Come, sir, there is no need to spar over words. I refer to the quota of grain shipments, and to the increased quota, a matter of 13% for this new fiscal year. Do we have your assurance that you will honor those commitments? This is a minimum basis for discussion, else these talks can go no further. Then I am sorry to say, sir, that it would appear that our talks must cease. You're not being serious. Quite serious, sir. The sovereignty of free Luna is not the abstract matter you seem to feel it is. These commitments you speak of were the authority contracting with itself. My country is not bound by such. Any commitments from the sovereign nation I have the honor to represent are still to be negotiated. Rabble, growled a North American. I told you they were being too soft on 'em. Jailbirds, thieves, and whores. They don't understand decent treatment. Order. Just remember, I told you, if I had 'em in Colorado, we would teach 'em a thing or two. We know how to handle their sort. The gentleman member will please be in order. I am afraid, said Hindu member, Parsi in fact, but committee man from India, I am afraid I must agree in essence with the gentleman member from the North American Directorate. India cannot accept the concept of that the grain commitments are mere scraps of paper. Decent people do not play politics with hunger.
And besides, the Argentino put in, they breed like animals, pigs.
Prof made me take a tranquilizing drug before that session, and insisted on seeing me take it. Prof said quietly,
Honorable Chairman, may I have consent to amplify my meaning before we conclude, perhaps too hastily, that these talks must be abandoned? Proceed. Unanimous consent? Free of interruption? Chairman looked around. Consent. Consent is unanimous, he stated, and the gentlemen members are placed on notice that I will invoke Special Rule 14 at the next outburst. The Sergeant at Arms is directed to note this and act. The witness will proceed. I will be brief, Honorable Chairman.
Prof said something in Spanish. All I caught was Senor. Argentino turned dark, but did not answer. Prof went on.
I must first answer the gentleman member from North America on a matter of personal privilege, since he has impugned my fellow countrymen. I, for one, have seen the inside of more than one jail. I accept the title, nay, I glory in the title of jailbird. We citizens of Luna are jailbirds and descendants of jailbirds. But Luna herself is a stern schoolmistress. Those who have lived through her harsh lessons have no cause to feel ashamed. In Luna City, a man may leave purse unguarded or home unlocked and feel no fear. I wonder if this is true in Denver. As may be, I have no wish to visit Colorado to learn a thing or two. I am satisfied with what Mother Luna has taught me, and rabble we may be, but we are now a rabble in arms.
To the gentleman member from India, let me say that we do not play politics with hunger. What we ask is an open discussion of facts of nature, unbound by political assumptions false to fact. If we can hold this discussion, I can promise to show a way in which Luna can continue grain shipments and expand them enormously, to the great benefit of India.
Both Chinese and Indian looked alert. Indian started to speak, checked himself, then said, Honorable Chairman, will the chair ask the witness to explain what he means?
The witness is invited to amplify. Honorable Chairman, gentlemen members, there is indeed a way for Luna to expand by tenfold or even 100 her shipments to our hungry millions. The fact that grain barges continued to arrive on schedule during our time of trouble, and are still arriving today, is proof that our intentions are friendly. But you do not get milk by beating the cow. Discussions of how to augment our shipments must be based on the facts of nature, not on the false assumption that we are slaves bound by a work quota we never made. So, which shall it be? Will you persist in believing that we are slaves, indentured to an authority other than ourselves? Or will you acknowledge that we are free, negotiate with us, and learn how we can help you?
Chairman said,
In other words, you ask us to buy a pig in a poke. You demand that we legalize your outlaw status. Then you will talk about fantastic claims that you can increase grain shipments 10 or 100-fold. What you claim is impossible. I am expert in lunar economics. And what you ask is impossible. It takes the Grand Assembly to admit a new nation. Then place it before the Grand Assembly. Once seated as sovereign equals, we will discuss how to increase shipments and negotiate terms. Honorable Chairman, we grow the grain. We own it. We can grow far more, but not as slaves. Luna's sovereign freedom must first be recognized. Impossible, and you know it. The lunar authority cannot abdicate its sacred responsibility.
Prof sighed.
It appears to be an impasse. I can only suggest that these hearings be recessed while we all take thought. Today our barges are arriving, but the moment that I am forced to notify my government that I have failed, they will stop.
Prof's head sank back on pillow as if it had been too much for him. As may have been. I was doing well enough, but was young and had had practice in how to visit Terra and stay alive. A loony his age should not risk it. After minor fufuro, oh my god, fufuro, I love it, which Prof ignored, they loaded us into a lorry and scooted us back to hotel. Once on their way, I said, Prof, what was it you said to Senor Jellybelly that raised blood pressure? He chuckled.
Comrade Stewart's investigations of these gentlemen turn up remarkable facts. I asked who owned a certain brothel of Cala Florida in BA these days, and did it now have a star redhead?
Why, you used to patronize it? Try to imagine Prof in such.
Never. It has been 40 years since I was last in Buenos Aires. He owns that establishment, Manuel, through a dummy, and his wife, a beauty with Titian hair, once worked in it.
Was sorry had asked. Wasn't that a foul blow and undiplomatic? But Prof closed eyes and did not answer.
Titian? 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 I don't actually know how that's pronounced. Too late.
He was recovered enough to spend an hour at a reception for newsmen that night, with white hair framed against a purple pillow and thin body decked out in embroidered pajamas. Looked like VIP course at an important funeral, except for eyes and dimples. I looked mighty VIP too, in black and gold uniform which Stu claimed was lunar diplomatic uniform of my rank. Could have been, if Luna had had such things. Did not, or I would have known. I prefer a pea suit. Collar was tight. Nor did I ever find out what decorations on it meant. A reporter asked me about one, based on Luna as at Crescent as seen from Terra. Told him it was a prize for spelling. Stu was in earshot and said, "The colonel is modest. The decoration is of the same rank as the Victoria Cross, and in his case was awarded for an act of gallantry on the glorious, tragic day of—" He led them away, still talking. Stu could lie standing up almost as well as Prof. Me, I have to think out a lie ahead of time. Indian newspapers and casts were rough that night. Threat to stop grain shipments made them froth. Gentlest proposal was to clear out Luna, exterminate us criminal troglodytes, and replace us with honest Hindu peasants, who understood sacredness of life and would ship grain and more grain. Prof picked that night to talk and give handouts about Luna's inability to continue shipments, and why, and Stu's organization spread release throughout Terra. Oh. Prof picked that night to talk and give handouts about Luna's inability to continue shipments, and why. And Stu's organization spread release throughout Terra. Some reporters took time to dig out sense of figures and tackled Prof on glaring discrepancy.
Professor de la Paz, you say that grain shipments will dwindle away through failure of natural resources and that by 2082 Luna won't even be able to feed its own people. Yet earlier today you told the Lunar Authority that you could increase shipments a dozen times or more.
Prof said sweetly,
That committee is the Lunar Authority? Well, it's an open secret. So it is, sir, but they have maintained the fiction of being an impartial investigating committee of the Grand Assembly. Don't you think that they should disqualify themselves, so that we could receive a fair hearing? It's not my place to say, Professor. Let's get back to my question. How do you reconcile the two? I'm interested in why it's not your place to say, sir. Isn't the concern of every citizen of Terra to help avoid a situation which will produce war between Terra and her neighbor? War? What in the world makes you speak of war, Professor? Where else can it end, sir? If the Lunar Authority persists in its intransigence, we cannot accede to their demands. Those figures show why. If they will not see this, then they will attempt to subdue us by force, and we will fight back. Like cornered rats. For cornered we are, unable to retreat, unable to surrender. We do not choose war. We wish to live in peace with our neighbor planet, in peace and peacefully trade. But the choice is not ours. We are small. You are gigantic. I predict that the next move will be for the Lunar Authority to attempt to subdue Luna by force. This peacekeeping agency will start the first interplanetary war.
journalist frowned.
Aren't you overstating it? Let's assume that the Authority, or the Grand Assembly, as the Authority hasn't any warships of its own, let's suppose the nations of Earth decide to displace your government. You might fight. On Luna, I suppose you would. But that hardly constitutes interplanetary war. As you pointed out, Luna has no ships. To put it bluntly, you can't reach us.
I had chair close by Prof's stretcher, listening. He turned to me.
Tell them, Colonel.
I parroted it. Prof and Mike had worked out stock situations. I had memorized and was ready with answers. I said, "Do you gentlemen remember the Pathfinder? How she came plunging in out of control?" They remembered. Nobody forgets greatest disaster of early days of spaceflight when unlucky Pathfinder hit a Belgian village. "We have no ships," I went on, "but would be possible to throw those barge loads of grain, instead of delivering them into parking orbit." Next day this evoked a headline: "Loonies threaten to throw rice." At the moment it produced awkward silence. Finally journalist said,
Nevertheless, I would like to know how you reconcile your two statements. No more grain after 2082. and 10 or 100 times as much. There is no conflict, Prof answered. They are based on different sets of circumstances. The figures you have been looking at show the present circumstances, and the disaster they will produce in only a few years through drainage of Luna's natural resources. Disaster which these authority bureaucrats, or should I say authoritarian bureaucrats, would avert by telling us to stand in the corner like naughty children.
Prof paused for labored breathing, went on.
The circumstances under which we can continue or greatly increase our grain shipments are the obvious corollary of the first. As an old teacher, I can hardly refrain from classroom habits. The corollary should be left as an exercise for the student. Will someone attempt it?
Was uncomfortable silence. Then a little man with strange accent said slowly,
It sounds to me as if you talk about way to replenish natural resource. Capital! Excellent!
Prof flashed dimples.
You, sir, will have a gold star on your term report. To make grain requires water and plant foods. Phosphates, other things, ask the experts. Send these things to us. We'll send them back as wholesome grain. Put down a hose in the limitless Indian Ocean. Line up those millions of cattle here in India. Collect their end product and ship it to us. Collect your own night soil. Don't bother to sterilize it. We've learned to do such things cheaply and easily. Send us briny seawater, rotten fish, dead animals, city sewage, cow manure, offal of any sort. And we will send it back, ton for ton, as golden grain. Send 10 times as much, we'll send back 10 times as much grain. Send us your poor, your dispossessed. Send them by thousands and hundreds of thousands. We'll teach them swift, efficient lunar methods of tunnel farming and ship you back unbelievable tonnage. Gentlemen, Luna is one enormous fallow farm, 4,000 million hectares, waiting to be plowed.
That startled them. Then somebody said slowly, But what do you get out of it? Luna, I mean.
Prof shrugged. Money, in the form of trade goods. There are many things you make cheaply which are dear in Luna. Drugs, tools, book films, gauds for our lovely ladies. Buy our grain, and you can sell to us at a happy profit.
A Hindu journalist looked thoughtful, started to write. Next to him was a European type who seemed unimpressed. He said,
Professor, have you any idea the cost of shipping that much tonnage to the moon?
Prof waved it aside.
A technicality. Sir, there was a time when it was not simply expensive to ship goods across oceans, but impossible. Then it was expensive, difficult, dangerous. Today, you sell goods half around your planet almost as cheaply as next door. Long distance shipping is the least important factor in cost. Gentlemen, I am not an engineer, but I have learned this about engineers. When something must be done, engineers can find a way that is economically feasible. If you want the grain that we can grow, turn your engineers loose.
Prof gasped and labored, signaled for help, and nurses wheeled him away. I declined to be questioned on it, telling them that they must talk to Prof when he was well enough to see them. So they pecked at me on other lines. One man demanded to know why, since we paid no taxes, we colonists thought we had the right to run things our own way. After all, those colonies had been established by federated nations. By some of them. It had been terribly expensive. Earth had paid all bills. And now you colonists enjoy benefits and pay not one dime of taxes. Was that fair? I wanted to tell him to blow it. But Prof had again made me take a tranquilizer, and it required me to swat that endless list of answers to trick questions. Let's take that one at a time, I said. First, what is it you want us to pay taxes for? Tell me what. Tell me what I get, and perhaps I'll buy it. No, Put it this way. Do you pay taxes?
Certainly I do, and so should you.
And what do you get for your taxes?
Huh? Taxes pay for government.
I said, excuse me, I'm ignorant. I've lived my whole life in Luna, and I don't know much about your government. Can you feed it to me in small pieces? What do you get for your money? They all got interested, and anything this aggressive little chum missed, others supplied. I kept a list. When they stopped, I read it back. Free hospitals. Aren't any in Luna. Medical insurance. We have that, but apparently not what you mean by it. If a person wants insurance, he goes to a bookie and works out a bet. You can hedge anything for a price. I don't hedge my health. I'm healthy. Or was till I came here. We have a public library, one Carnegie Foundation started with a few book films. It gets along by charging fees. Public roads, I suppose that would be our tubes, but they are no more free than air is free. Sorry, you have free air down here, don't you? I mean, our tubes were built by companies who put up money and are downright nasty about expecting it back and then some. Public schools. There are schools in all warrants, and I never heard of them turning away pupils, so I guess they are public. But they pay well too, because anyone in Luna who knows something is useful and is willing to teach it. Charges all that traffic will bear. I went on. Let's see what else. Social Security. I'm not sure what this is, but whatever it is, we don't have it. Pensions? You can buy a pension. Most people don't. Most families are large, and old people, say 100 and up, either fiddle along at something they like, or sit and watch video, or sleep. They sleep a lot after, say, 120.
Sir, excuse me, do people really live as long on the moon as they say?
I looked surprised, but wasn't. This was a stimulated question, for which simulated question, for which an answer had been taped. Nobody knows how long a person will live in Luna. We haven't been there long enough. Our oldest citizens were born Earthside. It's no test. So far, no one born in Luna has died of old age, but that's still no test. They haven't had time to grow old yet, less than a century. But, well, take me, madam. How old would you say I am? I'm authentic loony, third generation.
Truthfully, Colonel Davis, I was surprised at your youthfulness. For this mission, I mean. You appear to be about 22. Are you older? Not much, I fancy.
Madam, I regret that your local gravitation makes it impossible for me to bow. Thank you. I've been married longer than that.
What? Oh, you're jesting.
Madam, I would never venture to guess a lady's age, but if you will emigrate to Luna, you will keep your present youthful loveliness much longer, and add at least 20 years to your life. I looked at List. I'll lump the rest of this together by saying we don't have any of it in Luna, so I can't see any reason to pay taxes for it. On that other point, sir, surely you know that the initial cost of the colonies has long since been repaid several times over through grain shipments alone? We are being bled white of our most essential resources, and not even being paid an open market price. That's why the Lunar Authority is being stubborn. They intend to go on bleeding us. The idea that Luna has been an expense to Terra and the investment must be recovered is a lie, invented by the Authority to excuse their treating us as slaves. The truth is that Luna has not cost Terra one dime this century, and the original investment has long since been paid back. He tried to rally. Oh, surely you're not claiming that the lunar colonies have paid all the billions of dollars it took to develop spaceflight? I could present a good case. However, there is no excuse to charge that against us. You have spaceflight. You people of Terra. We do not. Luna has not one ship. So why should we pay for what we never received? It's like the rest of this list. We don't get it. Why should we pay for it? Had been stalling, waiting for a claim that Prof had told me I was sure to hear, and got it at last.
Just a moment, please, came a confident voice. You ignored the two most important items on that list: police protection and armed forces. You boasted that you were willing to pay for what you get. So how about paying almost a century of back taxes for those two? It should be quite a bill. Quite a bill. He smiled smugly.
Wanted to thank him. Thought Prof was going to chide me for failing to yank it out. People looked at each other and nodded, pleased I had been scored on. Did best to look innocent. Please? Don't understand. Luna has neither police nor armed forces.
You know what I mean. You enjoy the protection of the peace forces of the Federated Nations. And you do have the police, paid for by the Lunar Authority. I know to my certain knowledge that two phalanges were sent to the moon less than a year ago to serve as policemen.
Oh, I sighed. Can you tell me how FN peace forces protect Luna? I did not know that any of your nations wanted to attack us. We are far away and have nothing anyone envies. Or did you mean we should pay them to leave us alone? If so, there is old saying that once you pay Danegeld, you never get rid of the Dane. Danegeld. Right, okay. Oh, sorry. Once you pay Danegeld, you never get rid of the Dane. Sir, we will fight FN armed forces if we must. We shall never pay them. Now, about those so-called policemen. They were not sent to protect us. Our Declaration of Independence told the true story about those hoodlums. Did your papers print it? Some had, some hadn't, depended on country. They went mad and started raping and murdering, and now they are dead. So don't send us any more troops. Was suddenly tired and had to leave. Really was tired. Not much of an actor, and making that talk come out way Prof thought it should was strain.
Hoi polloi.
Uh, du- 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 du. Sorry. Oh, one sec. Sorry. Combination of dry throat and then some drops of water going down the wrong tube. Always is great risk when talking about moon. Speaking of great risks on the moon, regolith. Just lunar dust is really nasty, nasty shit. Um, like setting aside the fact that there's no atmosphere, actually, as a result of the fact that there's no atmosphere, the moon dust doesn't erode the way sand and grit does here into nice little round shapes. It stays in all these nasty hooked barb shapes. So as you're going in and out of airlocks on the moon, you want to be pretty careful that you're cleaning yourself off. And if you get it in your eye, well, ha, kiss that eye goodbye. Unless you've got immediate medical attention to flush it out. All right, so where are we? Oh, good, I didn't lose the page. This chapter's even longer. Great. Okay, I'm turning off the Russian accent because he's a lot of talk. It's not so easy. It really was tired. It was strain.
Chapter 18. Was not told till later that I had received an assist in that interview. Lead about police and armed forces had been fed by a stooge. Stu LaJoy took no chances. But by time I knew, I had experience in handling interviews. We had them endlessly. Despite being tired, was not through that night. In addition to press, some agro-diplomatic corps had risked showing up. Few and none officially, even from Chad. But we were curiosities, and they wanted to look at us. Only one was important, a Chinese. Was startled to see him. He was Chinese member of committee. I met him simply as Dr. Chan, and we pretended to be meeting first time. He was that Dr. Chan who was then senator from Great China, and also Great China's longtime #1 boy in Lunar Authority, and, much later, vice chairman and premier shortly before his assassin. After getting out point I was supposed to make, with bonus through others that could have waited, I guided Chair to bedroom, and was at once summoned to Prof's. Oh my God! It was at once summoned to Prof's. Manuel, I'm sure you noticed our distinguished visitor from the Middle Kingdom.
Old Chinese from committee?
Try to curb the loony talk, son. Please don't use it at all here, even with me. Yes, he wants to know what we meant by tenfold or 100-fold. So, tell him.
Straight or swindle?
The straight. This man is no fool. Can you handle the technical details?
Done my homework, unless he's expert in ballistics.
He's not. But don't pretend to know anything you don't know, and don't assume that he's friendly. But he could be enormously helpful if he concludes that our interests and his coincide. But don't try to persuade him. He's in my study. Good luck. And remember, speak standard English. Dr. Chan stood up as I came in. I apologized for not standing. He said that he understood difficulties that a gentleman from Luna labored under here, and for me not to exert myself. Shook hands with himself and sat down. I'll skip some formalities. Did we or did we not have some specific solution when we claimed there was a cheap way to ship massive tonnage to Luna? Told him was a method, expensive in investment but cheap in running expenses.
It's the one we use on Luna, sir. A catapult, an escape speed induction catapult.
His expression changed not at all. Colonel, are you aware that such has been proposed many times and was always rejected for what seemed good reasons? Something to do with air pressure.
Yes, doctor, but we believe, based on extensive analyses by computer and our own experience with catapulting, that today the problem can be solved. Two of our larger firms, the Luna Ho Company and the Bank of Hong Kong in Luna, are ready to head a syndicate to do it as a private venture. They would need help here on Earth and might share voting stock, though they would prefer to sell bonds and retain control. Primarily what they need is a concession from some government, a permanent easement on which to build the catapult, probably India.
Above was set speech. Luno Hoko was bankrupt if anybody examined books, and Hong Kong Bank was strained, was acting as central bank for country undergoing upheaval. Purpose was to get in last word. India. Prof had coached me that this word must come last. Dr. Chan answered, Never mind financial aspects. Anything which is physically possible can always be made financially possible. Money is a bugaboo of small minds. Why do you select India?
Well, sir, India now consumes, I believe, over 90% of our grain shipments.
93.1%.
Yes, sir. India is deeply interested in our grain, so it seemed likely that she would cooperate. She could grant us land, make labor and the materials available, and so forth. But I mentioned India because she holds a wide choice of possible sites, very high mountains not too far from Terra's equator. The latter is not essential, just helpful. But the site must be a high mountain. It's that air pressure you spoke of, or air density. The catapult head should be at as high altitude as feasible, but the ejection end, where the load travels over 11 kilometers per second, must be in air so thin that it approaches vacuum, which calls for a very high mountain. Take the peak Nanda Devi, around 400 kilometers from here. It has a railhead 60 kilometers from it, and a road almost to its base. It is 8,000 meters high. I don't know that Nanda Devi is ideal. It is simply a possible site with good logistics. The ideal site would have to be selected by Terran engineers. A higher mountain would be better? Oh, yes, sir, I assured him. A higher mountain would be preferred over one nearer the equator. The catapult can be designed to make up for loss in free ride from Earth's rotation. The difficult thing is to avoid, so far as possible, this pesky thick atmosphere. Excuse me, Doctor. I did not mean to criticize your planet. There are higher mountains. Colonel, tell me about this proposed catapult. I started to. The length of the length of an escape speed catapult is determined by the acceleration. We think, or the computer calculates, that an acceleration of 20 gravities is about optimum. For Earth's escape speed, this requires a catapult 323 kilometers in length. Therefore, stop, please. Colonel, are you seriously proposing to bore a hole over 300 kilometers deep? Oh no, construction has to be above ground to permit shockwaves to expand. The stator would stretch nearly horizontally, rising perhaps 4 kilometers in 300 and in a straight line. Almost straight, as Coriolis acceleration and other minor variables make it a gentle curve. The lunar catapult is straight so far as the eye could see, and so nearly horizontal that the barges just miss some peaks beyond it. Oh, I thought you were overestimating the capacity of present-day engineering. We drilled deeply today. Not that deeply. Go on. Doctor, it may be that common misconception which caused you to check me is why such a catapult has not been constructed before this. I've seen those earlier studies. Most assumed that the catapult would be vertical, or that it would have to tilt up at the end to toss the spacecraft into the sky, and neither is feasible nor necessary. I suppose the assumption arose from the fact that your spaceships do boost straight up, or nearly. I went on. But they do that to get above atmosphere, not to get into orbit. Escape speed is not a vector quantity, it is scalar. A load bursting from a catapult at escape speed will not return to Earth no matter what its direction. Two corrections. It must not be headed toward the Earth itself, but at some part of the sky hemisphere, and it must have enough added velocity to punch through whatever atmosphere it still traverses. If it is headed in the right direction, it will wind up at Luna. Ah, yes. Then this catapult could be used but once each lunar month? No, sir. On the basis on which you are thinking, it would be on the basis on which you are thinking, it would be once every day, picking the time to fit where Luna will be in her orbit. But in fact, or so computer says, I'm not an astronautics expert. In fact, this catapult could be used almost any time, simply by varying ejection speed, and the orbits could still wind up at Luna. I don't visualize that. Neither do I, Doctor, but excuse me, but isn't there an exceptionally fine computer at Peiping University? And if there is, did I detect an increase in bland inscrutability? A cyborg computer? Pickled brains? Or live ones aware? Horrible, either way. Why not ask a top-notch computer for all possible ejection times for such a catapult as I have described? Some orbits go far outside Luna's orbit before returning to where they can be captured by Luna, taking a fantastically long time. Others hook around Terra and then go quite directly. Some are as simple as the ones we use from Luna. There are periods each day when short orbits may be selected, but the load is in the catapult less than 1 minute. The limitation is how fast the loads can be made ready. It is even possible to have more than one load going up the catapult at a time, if the power is sufficient and computer control is versatile. The only thing that worries me is these high mountains. They are covered with snow. Usually, he answered, ice and snow and bare rock. Well, sir, being born in Luna, I don't know anything about snow. The stator would not only have to be rigid under the heavy gravity of this planet, but would have to withstand dynamic thrusts at 20 gravities. I don't suppose it could be anchored to ice or snow. Or could it be? I am not an engineer, Colonel, but it seems unlikely. Snow and ice would have to be removed and kept clear. Weather would be a problem, too. Weather I know nothing about, Doctor, and all I know about ice is that it has a heat of crystallization of 335 million joules per ton. I have no idea how many tons would have to be melted to clear the site, or how much energy would be required to keep it clear, but it seems to me that it might take as large a reactor to keep it free of ice as to power the catapult. We can build reactors, we can melt ice, or engineers can be sent north for re-education until they do understand ice. Dr. Chan smiled, and I shivered. However, the engineering of ice and snow was solved in Antarctica years ago. Don't worry about it. A clear, solid rock site about 350 kilometers long at a high altitude. Anything else I should know? Not much, sir. Melted ice could be collected near the catapult head and thus be most massive part of what will be shipped to Luna. Quite a saving. Also, the steel canisters would be reused to ship grain to Earth, thus stopping another train that Luna can't take. No reason why a canister should not make the trip hundreds of times. At Luna, it would be much the way barges are now landed off Bombay, solid charge retro rockets programmed by ground control. Except that it would be much cheaper, 2.5 km/s change of motion versus 11 plus, a squared factor of about 20. But actually even more favorable, as retros are parasitic weight and the payload improves accordingly. There is even a way to improve that. Oh god, it just keeps going. It just doesn't stop. How? Doctor, this is outside my specialty, but everybody knows that your best ships use hydrogen as the reaction mass, heated by a fusion reactor. But hydrogen is expensive in Luna, and any mass could be reaction mass. It just would not be as efficient. Can you visualize an enormous brute force space tug designed to fit lunar conditions? It would use raw rock, vaporized, as reaction mass, and would be designed to go up into parking orbit, pick up those shipments from Terra, bring them down to Luna's surface. It would be ugly, all the fancy stripped away. Might not be manned even by a cyborg. It could be piloted from the ground, by computer. Yes, I suppose such a ship could be designed, but let's not complicate things. Have you covered the essentials about this catapult? I believe so, Doctor. The site is the crucial thing. Take that peak, Nanda Devi. By the maps I have seen, it appears to have a long, very high ridge sloping to the west for about the length of our catapult. If that is true, it would be ideal. Less to cut away, less to bridge. I don't mean that it is the ideal site, but that is the sort to look for. A very high peak with a long, long ridge west of it. I understand. Dr. Chan left abruptly.
Next few weeks I repeated that in a dozen countries, always in private and with implication that it was secret. All that changed was name of mountain. In Ecuador, I pointed out that Chimborazo was almost on equator. Ideal. But in Argentina, I emphasized that their Aconcagua, Aconcagua was the highest peak in Western Hemisphere. In Bolivia, I noted that Altiplano was as high as Tibetan Plateau, almost true, much nearer equator, and offered a wide choice of sites for easy construction, leading up to peaks comparable to any on Terra. I talked to a North American who was a political opponent of that Choom who had oh my K. Okay, let's try that again. I talked to a North American who was a political opponent of that Choom who had called us rabble. I pointed out that, while Mount McKinley was comparable to anything in Asia or South America, there was much to be said for Mauna Loa, extreme ease of construction. Doubling G's to make it short enough to fit, and Hawaii would be spaceport of world. Whole world, for we talked about day when Mars would be exploited and freight for 3, possibly 4 planets would channel through their big island. Never mentioned Mauna Loa's volcanic nature. Instead, I noted that location permitted an aborted load to splash harmlessly in Pacific Ocean. In Union was only one peak discussed, Lenin, over 7,000 meters, and rather too close to their big neighbor. Kilimanjaro, Popocatépetl, Logan, El Libertado, my favorite peak changed by country. All that we required was that it be highest mountain in hearts of locals. I found something good to say about modest mountains of Chad when we were entertained there, and rationalized so well I almost believed it. Other times, with help of leading questions from Stu LaJoy's stooges, I talked about chemical engineering, of which I know nothing but had memorized facts, on surface of Luna, where endless free vacuum and sun power and limitless raw materials and predictable conditions permitted ways of processing expensive or impossible Earthside. When day arrived that cheap shipping both ways made it profitable to exploit Luna's virgin resources. Was always a suggestion that entrenched bureaucracy of lunar authority had failed to see great potential of Luna. True. Plus answer to a question always asked, which answer asserted that Luna could accept any number of colonists. Which was also true, although never mentioned that Luna, yes, and sometimes Luna's loonies, killed about half of new chums. But people we talked to rarely thought of emigrating themselves. They thought of forcing or persuading others to emigrate to relieve crowding, and to reduce their own taxes. Kept mouths shut about fact that half-fed swarms we saw everywhere did breed faster than even catapulting could offset. We could not house, feed, and train even 1,000,000 new chums each year, and 1,000,000 wasn't a drop on Terra. More babies than that were conceived every night. We could accept far more than would emigrate voluntarily, but if they used forced emigration and flooded us... Luna has only one way to deal with a new chum. Either he makes not one fatal mistake in personal behavior or in coping with environment that will bite without warning, or he winds up as fertilizer in a tunnel farm. All that immigration in huge numbers could mean would be all that immigration in huge numbers could mean would be that a larger percentage of immigrants would die, too few of us to help them past natural hazards. However, Prof did most talking about Luna's great future. I talked about catapults. During weeks we waited for committee to recall us, we covered much ground. Stu's men had set things up, and only question was how much we could take. Would guess that every week on Terra chopped a year off our lives, maybe more for Prof. But he never complained, and was always ready to be charming at one more reception. We spent extra time in North America. Date of our Declaration of Independence, exactly 300 years after that of North American British colonies, turned out to be wizard propaganda, and Stu's manipulators made most of it. North Americans are sentimental about their United States, even though it ceased to mean anything once their continent had been rationalized by FN. They elect a president every 8 years. Why, could not say. Why do British still have queen? And boast of being sovereign. Sovereign, like love, means anything you want it to mean. It's a word in dictionary between sober and sozzled. Sovereignty meant much in North America, and 4th of July was a magic date. 4th of July League, 4th of July League handled our appearances, and Stu told us that it had not cost much to get it moving, and nothing to keep going. League even raised money used elsewhere. North Americans enjoy giving no matter who gets it. Farther south, Stu used another date. His people planted idea that coup d'etat had been 5 May instead of 2 weeks later. We were greeted with Cinco de Mayo, Libertad, Cinco de Mayo. I thought they were saying thank you. Prof did all the talking. But in 4th of July country, I did better. Stu had me quit wearing a left arm in public. Sleeves of my costumes were sewed up so that Stump could nope, so that Stump could not be missed, and word was passed that I had lost it fighting for freedom. Whenever I was asked about it, all I did was smile and say, "See what comes of biting nails?" then change subject. I never liked North America, even first trip. It is not most crowded part of Terra, as a mere billion people. In Bombay, they sprawl on pavements. In Great New York, they pack them vertically. Not sure anyone sleeps. Was glad to be in invalid's chair. Is mixed up place another way. They care about skin color, by making point of how they don't care. First trip I was always too light or too dark, and somehow blamed either way, or was always being expected to take a stand on things I have no opinions on. Bog knows I don't know what genes I have. One grandmother came from a part of Asia where invaders passed through as regularly as locusts, raping as they went. Why not ask her? Learned to handle it by my second makey learny, but it left a sour taste. I think I prefer a place as openly racist as India, where if you aren't Hindu, you're nobody. Except that Parsis look down on Hindus and vice versa. However, I never really had to cope with North America's reverse racism when being Colonel O'Kelly Davis, hero of lunar freedom. We had swarms of bleeding hearts around us, anxious to help. I let them do two things for me, things I had never had time, money, or energy for as a student. I saw Yankees play and visited Salem. Should have kept my illusions. Baseball is better over video. You can really see it and aren't pushed in by 200,000 other people. Besides, somebody should have shot that outfield. I spent most of that game dreading moment when they would have to get my chair out through crowd. That and assuring host that I was having a wonderful time. Salem was just a place, no worse, and no better, than rest of Boston. After seeing it, I suspected they had hanged the wrong witches. But day wasn't wasted. I was filmed laying a wreath on a place where a bridge had been in another part of Boston, Concord, and made a memorized speech. Bridge is still there, actually. You can see it, down through the glass. Not much of a bridge. Prof enjoyed it all, rough as it was on him. Prof had great capacity for enjoying. He always had something new to tell about great future of Luna. In New York, he gave managing director of a hotel chain, one with a rabbit trademark, a sketch of what could be done with resorts in Luna. Once excursion rates were within reach of more people, visits too short to hurt anyone, escort service included, exotic side trips, gambling, no taxes. Playboy. Last point grabbed attention, so Prof expanded it into longer old age theme, a chain of retirement hostels where an earthworm could live on Terran old age pension and go on living 20, 30, 40 years longer than on Terra. As an exile? As an exile? As an okay. I'm reading question marks in the wrong place. Bear with me. Acting dyslexic. As an exile, but which was better? Live a live old age in Luna or a funeral crypt on Terra? His descendants could pay visits and fill those resort hotels. Prof embellished with pictures of nightclubs, with acts impossible in Terra's horrible gravity, sports to fit our decent level of gravitation. Even talked about swimming pools and ice skating and possibility of flying, though he had tripped his safeties. Thought he had tripped his safeties. He finished by hinting that Swiss cartel had tied it up. Next day, he was telling Foreign Divisions manager of Chase International Panagra that a Luna City branch should be staffed with paraplegics, paralytics, heart cases, amputees, others who found high gravity a handicap. Manager was a fat man who wheezed. He may have been thinking of it personally, but his ears pricked up at no taxes. We didn't have it all our own way. News was often against us, and were always hecklers. Whenever I had to take them on without Prof's help, I was likely to get tripped. One man tackled me on Prof's statement to committee that we owned grain grown in. Wow, I'm having a harder time with this than I thought. I apologize. One man tackled me on Prof's statement to committee that we owned grain grown in Luna. He seemed to take it for granted that we did not. Told him I did not understand question. He answered, "Isn't it true, Colonel, that your provisional government has asked for membership in Federated Nations?" Should have answered, "No comment," but fell for it and agreed. "Very well," he said. "The impediment seems to be the counterclaim that the moon belongs to the Federated Nations, as it always has, under supervision of the Lunar Authority. Either way, by your own admission, that grain belongs to the Federated Nations in trust." I asked how he reached that conclusion. He answered, "Colonel, you style yourself Under-Secretary of Foreign Affairs. Surely you are familiar with the Charter of Federated Nations." I had skimmed it. "Reasonably familiar," I said. Cautiously, I thought. "Then you know the first freedom guaranteed by the Charter in its current application through F&A Control Board Administrative Order number 1176, dated 3 March this year. You concede, therefore, that all grain grown on the moon in excess of the local ration is ab initio and beyond contest the property of all, title held in trust by the Federated Nations through its agencies, for a distribution as needed." He was writing as he talked. "Have you anything to add to that?" I said, "What in bug's name you talking about?" Then, "Come back. Haven't conceded anything." So, great New York Times printed, "Lunar Undersecretary says food belongs to hungry." New York Today. O. Kelly Davis, soi-disant Colonel of the Armed Forces of Free Luna, here on a junket to stir up support for the insurgents of the FN lunar colonies, said in a voluntary statement to this paper that the Freedom from Hunger clause in the Grand Charter applied to the lunar grain shipments. I asked Prof how should I have handled. "Always answer an unfriendly question with another question," he told me. "Never ask him to clarify. He'll put words in your mouth. This reporter, was he skinny? Ribs showing?" "No, heavy set." "Not living on 1,800 calories a day, I take it, which is the subject of that order he cited." Had you known, you could have asked him of how long he had conformed to the ration, and why he quit. Or asked him what he had for breakfast, then looked unbelieving no matter what he answered. Or, when you don't know what a man is getting at, let your counter question shift the subject to something you do want to talk about. Then, no matter what he answers, make your point and call on someone else. Logic does not enter into it, just tactics.
Prof, nobody here is living on 1800 calories a day. Bombay, maybe, not here.
Less than that in Bombay. Manuel, that equal ration is a fiction. Half the food on this planet is in the black market, or is not reckoned through one ruling or another. Or they keep two sets of books, and figures submitted to the FN having nothing to do with the economy. Do you think that grain from Thailand and Burma and Australia is correctly reported to the control board by Great China? I'm sure that the India representative on that food board doesn't. But India keeps quiet because she gets the lion's share from Luna, and then plays politics with hunger, a phrase you may remember, by using our grain to control her elections. Kerala had a planned famine last year. Did you see it in the news? No, because it wasn't in the news. A managed democracy is a wonderful thing, Manuel, for the managers. And its greatest strength is a free press when free is defined as responsible, and the managers define what is irresponsible. Do you know what Luna needs most?
More ice?
A news system that does not bottleneck through one channel. Our friend Mike is our greatest danger.
Huh? Don't you trust Mike?
Manuel, on some subjects I don't trust even myself. Limiting the freedom of news just a little bit is in the same category with the classic example, a little bit pregnant. We are not yet free, nor will we be, as long as anyone, even our ally Mike, controls our news. Someday I hope to own a newspaper independent of any source or channel. I would happily set print by hand, like Benjamin Franklin.
I gave up. Prof, suppose these talks fail and grain shipments stop. What happens?
People back home will be vexed with us, and many here on Terra would die. Have you read Malthus?
Don't think so.
Many would die. Then a new stability would be reached with somewhat more people, more efficient people and better fed. This planet isn't crowded, it is just mismanaged. And the unkindest thing you can do for a hungry man is to give him food. Give. Read Malthus. It is never safe to laugh at Dr. Malthus. He always has the last laugh. A depressing man. I'm glad he's dead. But don't read him until this is over. Too many facts hamper a diplomat, especially an honest one.
I'm not especially honest.
But you have no talent for dishonesty, so your refuge must be ignorance and stubbornness. You have the latter, try to preserve the former. For the nonce. Lad, Uncle Bernardo is terribly tired.
I said, sorry, and wheeled him out of his room. Prof was hitting too hard a pace. I would have been willing to quit if it would ensure his getting into a ship and out of that gravity. But traffic stayed one way. Grain barges, naught else. But Prof had fun. As I left and waved lights out, noticed again a toy he had bought, one that delighted him like a kid on Christmas. A brass cannon. A real one, from sailing ship days. Was small, barrel only about half a meter long, and massing, with wooden carriage, only kilos 15. A signal gun, its papers said. Reeked of ancient history, pirates, men walking the plank. A pretty thing, but I asked Prof, why? If we ever managed to leave, price to lift that mast to Luna would hurt. I was resigned to abandoning a pea suit with years more wear in it. Abandon everything but 2 left arms and a pair of shorts. If pressed, might give up social arm. If very pressed, would skip shorts. He reached out and stroked shiny barrel.
Manuel, once there was a man who held a political make-work job like so many here in this directorate, shining brass cannon around a courthouse.
Why would a courthouse have cannon?
Never mind. He did this for years. It fed him and let him save a bit, but he was not getting ahead in the world. So one day he quit his job, drew out his savings, bought a brass cannon, and went into business for himself.
Sounds like idiot.
No doubt. And so were we when we tossed out the warden. Manuel, you'll outlive me. When Luna adopts a flag, I would like it to be a cannon, or, on field sable, crossed by bar sinister gules of our proudly ignoble lineage. Do you think it could be managed?
I suppose so, if you'll sketch. But why a flag? Not a flagpole in all Luna.
It can fly in our hearts. A symbol for all fools so ridiculously impractical as to think they can fight City Hall. Will you remember, Manuel?
Sure. That is, we'll remind you when time comes.
Didn't like such talk. He had started using oxygen tent in private, and would not use in public. Guess I'm ignorant and stubborn. Was both in place called Lexington, Kentucky, in central managerial area. One thing no doctrine about, no memorized answers, was life in Luna. Prof said to tell truth and emphasize homely, warm, friendly things, especially anything different. Remember, Manuel, the thousands of Terrans who have made short visits to Luna are only a tiny fraction of 1%. To most people, we will be as weirdly interesting as a strange animal in a zoo. Do you remember that turtle on exhibition in Old Dome? That's us. Certainly did. They wore that insect out, staring at it. So when this male-female team started quizzing about family life in Luna, was happy to answer. I prettied it only by what I left out. Things that aren't family life, but poor substitutes in a community overloaded with males. Luna City is homes and families mainly, dull by Terra standards, but I like it. And other Warrens much same. People who work and raise kids and gossip and find most of their fun around dinner table. Not much to tell, so I discussed anything they found interesting. Every Luna custom comes from Terra, since that's where we all came from, but Terra is such a big place that a custom from Micronesia, say, may be strange in North America. This woman, can't call her lady, wanted to know about various sorts of marriage. First, was it true that one could get married without a license on Luna? I asked what a marriage license was. Her companion said, "Skip it, Mildred. Pioneer societies never have marriage licenses." "But don't you keep records?" she persisted.
Certainly, I agreed. My family keeps a family book that goes back almost to first landing at Johnson City. Every marriage, birth, death, every event of importance, not only in direct line, but all branches so far as we can keep track. And besides, is a man, a school teacher, going around copying old family records all over Warren, writing a history of Luna City. Hobby.
"But don't you have official records? Here in Kentucky, we have records that go back hundreds of years."
Madam, we haven't lived there that long.
"Yes, but, well, Luna City must have a city clerk. Perhaps you call him country recorder, the official who keeps track of such things, deeds and so forth." I said,
Don't think so, ma'am. Some bookies do notary work, witnessing chops on contracts, keeping records of them. Is for people who don't read and write and can't keep own records. But never heard of one asked to keep a record of marriage. Not saying couldn't happen, but haven't heard.
"How delightfully informal! Then this other rumor about how simple it is to get a divorce on the moon, I dare say that's true, too?"
No, madam, wouldn't say divorce is simple. Too much to untangle. Mm, Take a simple example. One lady and say she has two husbands.
Two?
Might have more, might just have one. Or might be complex marriage. But let's take one lady and two men as typical. She decides to divorce one. Say it's friendly, with other husband agreeing and one she is getting rid of not making fuss. Not that it would do him any good. Okay, she divorces him. He leaves. Still leaves endless things. Men might be business partners, co-husbands often are. Divorce may break up partnership. Money matters to settle. These three may own cubic together, and while will be in her name, ex-husband probably has cash coming or rent. And almost always are children to consider, support and so forth. Many things. No, madam, divorce is never simple. Can divorce him in 10 seconds, but may take 10 years to straighten out loose ends. Isn't it much that way here?
Uh, just forget I ever asked the question, Colonel. May just be simpler here.
She did not talk that way. She did talk that way, but was understandable once I got the program. Won't spell it again.
So it's written out phonetically
In the Kentucky accent.
um, like it is spelled, and I quote, just forget spelled Fuhget, Eva, Evah, ask the question, Colonel, Cunn apostrophe L. It may be simpler, Simpluh, here, Hyuh, sorry, here. And so he says after that, she did talk that way, but was understandable once I got the program. Won't spell it again. And that's just to get the reader in the know of, it puts the voice in your head surgically, only removable with bleach.
But if that is a simple marriage, what is a complex one?
Found self explaining polyandries, clans, groups, lines, and less common patterns, considered vulgar by conservative people such as my own family. Deal my mother set up, say, after she ticked off my old man, though didn't describe that one. Mother was always too extreme. Woman said,
You have me confused. What is the difference between a line and a clan?
Are quite different. Take own case. I have honor to be member of one of oldest line marriages in Luna, and, in my prejudiced opinion, best. You asked about divorce. Our family has never had one, and would bet long odds never will. A line marriage increases in stability year after year, gains practice in art of getting along together, until notion of anybody leaving is unthinkable. Besides, takes unanimous decision of all wives to divorce a husband. Could never happen. Senior wife would never let it get that far.
Went on describing advantages. Financial security, fine home life it gives children, fact that death of a spouse, while tragic, could never be tragedy it was in a temporary family, especially for children. Children simply could not be orphaned. Suppose I wax too enthusiastic, but my family is most important thing in my life. Without them, I'm just one-armed mechanic who could be eliminated without causing a draft.
Here's why is stable, I said. Take my youngest wife, 16. Likely be in her 80s before senior wife. Before is senior wife. Before is senior wife. Oy. Doesn't mean all wives senior to her will die by then. Unlikely in Luna. Females seem to be immortal. But may opt out of family management by then. By our family traditions, they usually do, without younger wives putting pressure on them. So, Ludmila,
Ludmilla?
Ruski name, from fairy tale. Mila will have over 50 years of good example before she has to carry burden. She's sensible to start with, not likely to make mistakes, and if did, has otherwise to steady her. Self-correcting, like a machine with proper negative feedback. A good line marriage is immortal. Expect mine to outlast me 1,000 years at least. And is why shan't mine dying when time comes? Best part of me will go on living. Prof was being wheeled out. He had them stop stretcher cart and listened. I turned to him. Professor, I said, you know my family. Would mind telling this lady why it's a happy family, if you think so?
It is, agreed Prof. However, I would rather make a more general remark. Dear madam, I gather that you find our lunar marriage customs somewhat exotic. Oh, I wouldn't go that far, she said hastily. Just somewhat unusual. They arise, as marriage customs always do, from economic necessities of the circumstance, and our circumstances are very different from those here on earth. Take the line type of marriage which my colleague has been praising, and justifiably, I assure you, despite his personal bias. I am a bachelor, and have no bias. Line marriage is the strongest possible device for conserving capital and ensuring the welfare of children, the two basic societal functions for marriage everywhere, in an environment in which there is no security, neither for capital nor for the children, other than that devised by individuals. Somehow, human beings always cope with their environments. Line marriage is a remarkably successful invention to that end. All other lunar forms of marriage serve that same purpose, though not as well.
He said good night and left. I had with me, always, a picture of my family, newest one, our wedding with Wyoming. Brides are at their prettiest, and Wyo was radiant. And rest of us looked handsome and happy, with Grandpa tall and proud and not showing failing faculties. But was disappointed. They looked at it oddly. But Man, Matthew's name was, said, "Can you spare this picture, Colonel?" Winced. "Only copy I have, and a long way from home." "For a moment, I mean. Let me have it photographed. Right here. It need never leave your hands." "Oh, certainly." Not a good picture of me, but his face I have, and did Wyo justice, and they just don't come prettier than Lenore. So he photographed it, and next morning they did come right into our hotel suite, and woke me before time, and did arrest me and take me away. Oh my God, the language got worse. I can't read. So he photographed it, and next morning they did come right into our hotel suite, and woke me before time, and did arrest me, and take me away wheelchair and all, and did lock me up in a cell with bars for bigamy, for polygamy, for open immorality and public and plub. I'm gonna have to do this again. Give me a sec. See, he's shifting into a tone that's intended to mimic slash ape a police report, and it's or a court report. So he photographed it, and next morning they did come right into our hotel suite, and woke me before time, and did arrest me, and take me away, wheelchair and all, and did lock me in a cell with bars, for bigamy, for polygamy, for open immorality, and publicly inciting others to same. Was glad Mum couldn't see. And that will do it for today. I got some other stuff I got to get done, but suffice it to say, we're just about the 3/4 mark. We're almost done. Hopefully, I'll be finished with this by the end of the year. That would be nice. I would appreciate it if I could get this book done by the end of the year because it might be killing me slowly, 1 week at a time. It's too bad too because it is a great book. The subject matter is fantastic. I guess uh, I highly recommend reading it, but not listening to someone try to butcher it with their own voice. Yeah, yeah. I'm way too late to quit at this point, so it is gonna get done. Like I can't just be like, nah, I'm gonna move on. It's way too late. I have too much damn pride, is what I got. Oh boy, how I regret it. So yeah, hopefully people are enjoying these. Thanks for tuning in, Kazong. I do really appreciate it. It shows that people care, and I respect your opinion most of all. Um,
if people do like these, I do them every Saturday at about noon Eastern Standard Time, live to Twitch, to Facebook, to YouTube, to would be going to Mixer, but Mixer's no longer a thing. Um, yeah, at noon. Storytime Saturdays, where I read short stories and indeed entire novels aloud, like Robert Heinlein's The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, as you've just heard. Um, I also do other streams throughout the week. I have a Mecha Mondays stream where I do something giant robot related or mecha adjacent, and a Warframe Wednesdays stream where I do some Warframey stuff for a couple hours. And I think, Kazong, you have to remind me of something for the Warframe Wednesdays stream, so I'm going to hold you to it. Um, Mirage, I think. I think it's Mirage. Just do Mirage. I will do Mirage. There will be much Mirage that day. And it will be good. It will not be like my Saren day, which did not go well because I hadn't played Saren in years. Mm. In any case, hopefully people are enjoying these. If they're not, tough. I'm going to keep doing them. Ha! So yeah. I'm glad you're enjoying them, Kazan. I do like that. So yeah, hope people have fun. Stay healthy, wealthy, and wise. Stay warm. It's getting cold, but not too warm. Being too warm is almost worse than being too cold, I find. I don't know. Not fond of really hot temperatures. Oh, but it's a dry heat. Oh, but I'm sweating. That's too much heat. Then again, being friggin' frigid doesn't help much either. All right, in any case, stay sane. That's important. And hard. All right. Have a good one, folks. Thanks for tuning in.